Well, we can go ahead and get started. I want to say thank you everybody for joining us today for the interviewing in the public sector session today. We have a group of exceptional panelists who are here to share their wisdom and advice with you. We have a series of questions to ask our panelists during this hour-long session. If you have any questions that come up during the session, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box. And we have moderators or some support who will be sharing those questions with our moderators. Following this session, we will also have a workshop on presenting your federal resume, which will begin at 3:30. We'd love for y'all to join us for that as well. Let me kick it off by having our moderator, Nick Shackley, go ahead and introduce himself.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me. My name is Nick Shackley. I'm the Assistant Director for the Career Center. Really excited to share some exciting questions with our panelists and be able to get some really valuable information that can help us better prepare and support for interviews within the government sector and just presenting our best foot forward. So thanks for having me. Thank you,
Nick. And next, I'd like to have all of our panelists, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves, and then we can jump into the questions. Andrew, if you wouldn't mind starting for us.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Andrew, actually Andy Traver. I'm on the Criminal Justice and Criminology faculty at MSU Denver. This is my 4th semester here. And before that, I was the director of the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, like the television shows NCIS, but for real, for 6 years. And before that, I was a federal agent with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives for 26 years. And I actually retired out of I ran the Denver office when I retired. Very happy to be here.
Okay. Ebony, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself to us next.
I'm sure thing. My name is Ebony Brooks. I work for the United States Department of Energy as the Staffing and Onboarding Supervisor. I've been with the department since 1999 in various capacities, most of them dealing with student outreach and recruitment. I have a strong passion for just helping people who are interested in transitioning from the education sphere in terms of internships, fellowships, students into public service. So I'm happy to be here and happy to help you guys in any way that I can.
Thank you, Ebony. Bernice, would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Absolutely. Hi, good afternoon. I'm Bernice Ugalde. I am an HR liaison with FEMA here in Region A, which is located in Lakewood, Colorado. I'm actually, I graduated from MSU Denver. So I'm really happy to be a part of the whole Aurora campus, tri-school. So I'm happy to be here. I work not only on the HR side for the region, but I'm part of the national recruitment effort. So that's how I really got involved in participating in all of these different events. I'm also a U.S. Army Reserve warrant officer in the human resources specialty. So I'm really happy to be here and to be able to answer whatever questions individuals may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernice. And then last but certainly not least, Demetrius Parker.
Hi, hello everyone. So I'm Demetrius Parker. I am the Talent Management Manager for Jefferson County. I've been with the county for a little over 7 years, and I'm also a military veteran. And like Ebony, very passionate about helping those who want to serve. So I'm passionate about serving.
Thank you, everybody. And I'll hand it over to Nick now.
Wonderful. All right, we'll go ahead and jump into it. And so for our panelists and for our attendees as well, I'll kind of just move around and we'll kind of do like a popcorn style where I'll kind of call in everyone to move through, kind of do a rotation and then have somebody else start and kind of move within that fashion. And so the first question, and honestly, I'll just start with Andrew since you're one of the first windows that I see within my frame. So Andrew, why don't you go ahead and let me know, what do you recommend students do to prepare for interviews within agency work, or even particularly for our other panelists, the agencies that they are a part of?
Well, I recommend that do some research so you understand the organization that you're going to interview with and understand the position that you're going to be applying for or interviewing for. And the other thing that's really good is just to practice, not really rehearse interviewing, but just practice beforehand, just have a conversation so that when you go into interview, so you have kind of like the conversational muscles are warmed up and ready to go and your brain's engaged.
Wonderful. Awesome. Thank you, Andrew. Demetrius, next on my window. So why don't you go ahead and respond to this question as well, thinking about how students could prepare for interviews in your agency.
Yeah, so I would probably definitely echo what Andrew said about knowing which organization that you are applying to. I can't tell you how many times I'm talking with a candidate and they'll tell me how much they love working or how excited they are about working for the state or for the city, and we're the county. And so you're thinking to yourself, well, good luck with that, but that's not who we are. So, and I get how folks can get things confused, but if you think about you're trying to impress an employer, and nothing is less impressive than calling them the wrong organization. So I would definitely echo that piece. The other piece is, again, come in and I would say with any organization, whether it's public sector or private, also understand that it is a two-way interview. And so as you're preparing for that, make sure that you do have questions prepared for that organization. I can't tell you how many times for me as a recruiter and most of my hiring managers, if we don't get questions at the end, then we feel like you're really not that invested. So
That's good.
Awesome. Wonderful, Demetrius. Ebony, you're next on my window. So how about for you and your agency?
They keep taking all the good ones.
Yeah.
But again, it's critical. Most federal agencies, we have our org charts on our websites. If you take a look at that org chart before interviewing, so you can know where that position falls within the organization, reading mission statements, trying to find people in the agency doing similar things to the work you're trying to do, maybe even reaching out to them. I took a very proactive approach when I came back to federal service, and I reached out to someone because they called me for an interview, but they didn't leave a phone number to call back. So sometimes you just have to be creative to learn about the organization you're working for. So again, look at that org chart, see if there are people that you can reach out to say, hey, I'm applying for this position. I noticed that you're in a similar role. What have been some things that you really enjoyed about the organization? So you're informed about the organization that you're going to work for. And as Demetrius pointed out, ask questions that are going to make you a memorable applicant. So, people ask, well, tell me about the benefits, tell me about the salary. Those are questions that everyone asks. What is something that you can ask that is going to really make someone think, wow, that was a really profound question? So there's this site that I'm a social media person, and there's this young lady that I follow named Resume Addict. And one of the tips that she gave is, is there anything I can clarify about my resume that'll help me demonstrate for you why I'm the most suitable person for the position you're looking to fill? So you want to make sure you leave that interview with the person that interviewed you having all of their questions answered. So sometimes your question is just, how can I clarify anything in my resume that isn't clear for you? What are some things that you would like to know more about me? And again, knowing the organization and the people that you're going to work for, and then giving examples of how you can contribute to some of the things that have been highlighted in the actual interview that you participated in.
Very good. And last but not least, Bernice, I was really curious, how about for FEMA? Any kind of tips for interviewing with your organization?
Absolutely. For us, we definitely always post our jobs on USA Jobs. And for real, USA Jobs will give you everything you need to know to prepare for the interview. I need you to get very familiar with the job offering announcement or opportunity announcement, because it's going to tell you what the position is going to be having you do. It's also going to give you what the specialized experience statement is. That means those are the type of experience bullets we're looking for in your resume. And the announcement is also probably more likely show and take you into a questionnaire. So if you answer those questions through the application process, you already are preparing to what may be asked of you during the interview. And most important for us in FEMA is understand what the agency does. I cannot tell you how many EMTs reach out to me to tell me they want to come and work for FEMA, but FEMA has nothing to do with emergency response. We are an emergency management agency, and that means we work fiscally with the federal government and with the local government. So we don't do, first responding type of actions. We actually manage things after a disaster. So I will say really get to know what is on the job description, what the specialized experience that the agency is looking for, and understand what the agency does. That's what I will tell students, to prepare for, because even if you don't have experience, your education or some of the classes that you have taken may give you some of that, just the knowledge base that you may need or be required for a position with FEMA. So those are the three main things that I would say, focus on.
Yeah. Research, research, research. It sounds like it's all really, really important within these aspects. So wonderful. And asking good questions too, showing that engagement and that excitement for the position, regaining some of that control to say, is this right for me? Wonderful. Thanks, panelists. So I'll go ahead and start with you on this one, Demetrius, and kind of again move through in that similar fashion, coming around to Andrew at the end. And so Demetrius, this question that I have for you is, what would you expect applicants to know about your organization before the interview? Kind of keeping in the similar thread of research, research, research. What would be specific things you would really like applicants to know?
So again, I think we kind of touched on this a little earlier. Is of course, what is it that we do, and who we are? So that's going to be probably first and foremost. The other thing would be is what is honestly, and I think this may also speak to all the other organizations, but what is government service? Like, what does that even mean? And then I guess the big piece is the why. Why do you want to even be a part of this organization? And so with that, meaning, do our missions align? Is like, what is it? And so I think that's really important for them to know about our organization. So knowing our mission, our vision, our values, so that they can ensure that they align with theirs, because we feel that that's very important for us.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Thank you for that. Ebony, how about for you?
I think it's really good to focus on the organization that you're applying for. It's one thing to recognize the agency, but within that agency, there are many organizations that are represented. And so just broadly having an understanding for the agency and what their mission is, getting an idea for the specific office or organization that you're working for. So for example, I work for the Department of Energy. Within the Department of Energy, there are many organizations. The organization that I work for is Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. And within Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, I work in the Workforce Management Office. So you can see there's several layers that my office falls within. So it's not just enough to know what the agency does. It's important to dig deeper to understand, okay, where, and again, it goes back to my comment on the org chart. You need to know where the office that you're applying to fits into the larger scale of things, so that when you're going to interview and meet with your potential supervisor, you know where you fit into the puzzle and you can do your research from that perspective. If you only know about the Department of Energy, you're losing a lot of insight when it comes to energy efficiency and renewable energy, and then subsequently workforce management. So really dig into the weeds to see where you fit into the bigger picture for the organization you're applying for, and learn about that organization as well as the agency level.
Yeah, organizational systems too, not just necessarily the position. Really
exactly.
Good. Yeah, Bernice, how about for you?
I will echo both Demetrius and Ebony. However, I think for FEMA, one of the most important items that if you don't know, you may not even be considered, is what are the values and the mission of this agency. We serve directly the public, and they're the most unique circumstances for them. They are going to have probably lost their house or lost their, valuables, and it's not always only about the individuals, but also the structures and the public works, the public good. So we are always under pressure, dealing with people that they are dealing with very drastic and tragic things. So you have to have integrity, respect, compassion. You have to understand that what we do is very unique in the sense that we service people that have been maybe lost everything. We're talking also FEMA. One of the things that most people focus on is hurricane season, but we have floods, avalanches, fires, tornadoes, and so many other things. So know a little bit more about what the mission of the agency is and what the values of our agency is, because to go back to what Demetrius was saying, if you don't understand what public service is, especially in our line of work, you may not be a good fit for our organization. We are very proud in making sure that all of the people that come and work with us are, a bigger part of our team. They're not just individuals that kind of work independently. And I think it's the same for most federal and local government positions, but us specifically, it's something that we look out for, that we can teach you everything else, but if we can't give you that base, core value, then we can, it may not work out. It may not be a relationship you want to enter with. So it's all I have to say for that.
Very good, thank you. And then Andrew, from your perspective, kind of thinking about how students can best prepare or what they should really know about an organization for an interview.
So it's all very good points. I come from an exclusively law enforcement background and a national security background. So we get a lot of applicants that are former law enforcement, or like myself, I came out of the military. So you kind of know how it works, but if you're coming straight out of college, you should make sure you have reasonable expectations about what you're undertaking. So it's service, but it's highly risky service that will test you and that will be very challenging. You'll run into situations that are extremely depressing and stress-filled, and that's important to know. And it's not a television show. It's not a Jason Bourne movie. I mean, a lot of it is hard work. A lot of it's drudgery. A lot of it's weekends, late nights. So I think there's a number of people that would like to be federal agents, but there's a smaller number that actually want to do the job. They want to be a federal agent and have the badge and all that and be able to say it. So for a quick example, when I was with NCIS, we would have a vacancy announcement on USA Jobs for 24 hours. We'd get 6,000 to 8,000 applicants, and 2/3 of them weren't even nominally qualified. They would just see NCIS agent, oh, that'd be cool, I like the shows, and they'd apply. And we had to sift through all of those to find the people that actually read the requirements and met the basic requirements. So make sure you know what you're getting into, and make sure that the prerequisites that are going to be expected, that you have those, that you don't show up and say, oh, I didn't realize I needed to have a degree. So, that's important. So be prepared and have good expectations.
Right, it's don't waste your or other people's time when you're not remotely qualified for opportunities and just taking wins
right
in the dark like that. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know a couple of students have asked some questions in our Q&A, so I wanted to go ahead and introduce these into the conversation. And so, panelists, feel free to kind of introduce and respond to these as you see fit or within your organization. And so one of these is in regards to alternative looks. And so the students are expressing that they have blue hair, which isn't normally something that they would see or find within government work. But it's kind of become their calling card within Colorado politics and lobbying and building rapport with legislatures. And so within their specific network, they're kind of curious, should they bite the bullet before looking for a job, or explain that once they get the interview, kind of the attire or alternative look for this particular individual? Yeah, Ebony, please.
I would just say, you should always present the best version of yourself and be true to yourself. So, if I had blue hair, I would not dye my hair to go on an interview. I would make sure I was well groomed for that interview, but I personally would not dye my hair. But that's me. I would take the risk. I believe that my credentials and my poise, and once I'm present in that interview, would make you rethink not hiring me simply because I have blue hair. I have colleagues who have purple hair, pink hair, who have tattoos. I'm a firm believer that a person should not be judged based on their appearance. Again, as long as they're professional with their appearance. And to me, blue hair does not mean you're not professional. That's my personal opinion. Everyone does not subscribe to the same channel. So you definitely have to weigh the risk. What's most important to you? Is it getting the job and then showing up with blue hair the first day you start? I personally would rather show up in my true self, so you're not surprised when I dye my hair back blue. That's just me. But again, that wouldn't work for everyone. I would hire you as long as your credentials were good.
Andrew, please go for it. As the first hand that I said to meet you, I was like, ah.
Yeah, I'll be quick. So, I mean, I work for the federal government. So the federal government is white shirt, dark tie, dark suit, right? That's how it is. And once you get on the job and get through training and you start working undercover, you can look however you want to look. But I know when you come to interview, you kind of have to look like a professional government drone. That's what they expect. And I love academia because I haven't had to put a tie on in a year and a half. I love that, right? After years and years of having to dress like that. And of course, in the field, you don't. But one of the things that federal agencies evaluate, or law enforcement agencies, is your presentation, like your body language, how you speak, eye contact. And if you have, facial tattoos and piercings and all that, right away, it's going to be points off. It's just, you got to look professional because you represent the agency, you represent the US government. And that's just how it is. I mean, it's a little more flexible than it used to be, but it's still, this is a government job. You're going to be a professional. You need to cut the figure of a government professional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Demetrius, how about for you, your response here?
Yeah, I guess my first response is there's a Colorado law that pretty much states where your hair should not be a part of that process. So that's the first thing I would think about, is that's that. And then I would probably echo what Ebony and what Andrew said, is first of all, if you do that research that we all talked about the organizations, that'll kind of give you some insight to what they're looking for. And then at the same time, be yourself. Be the best professional version of you, and whatever that looks like. And knowing, because if you dye your hair whatever you feel is appropriate for that job, but then you're upset the whole time because you feel that you're not truly being yourself, you're not truly going to be engaged in that job. And so it's not going to be a great fit for you or that organization in the end.
Very true.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I really appreciate that. Bernice, I was just curious if there was any thoughts on your end about this question.
I think I'm going to be just kind of like everybody else, but I have to say I do have colleagues and I have employees. They have purple hair or blue hair. I will say not only a Colorado law, but in general, HR policy says that you cannot judge someone based on the way they look. But, as an agency, depending on who you're applying for, think of the, think of their state and are they going to put you in front of people, and are you going to be representing the agency? Depending on what your type of work you're applying for or you're going to be doing, that may have a lot to do with that, right? This individual that I'm thinking of with the purple hair, she is a mitigator. She works in the field. She is a super smart person that has a degree in biology and small fish that are extinct and all other crazy stuff. So to us, it's like, I don't care what she looks like. She knows how to do her job, right? And so she was initially accepted and hired for the position with no problem. But obviously, when she came to her interview, she looked professional, presentable, with crazy color hair. So, and she was able to produce and show her credentials to do the job and to do it well. So I think it really all matters in what kind of job you're going to be doing, what kind of representation you're going to be doing for your organization or your agency. And yeah, there is nothing in the workbook that says don't hire somebody because they look different than you. I mean, it's I think it's across the board a much more flexible and acceptable workplace. And I have to say, I speak for FEMA. We are very relaxed. We don't wear ties in shirts to the office. It's a much more Colorado type relaxed workspace. Now, if you go to headquarters, you can expect that everybody's going to be wearing a suit and tie. So it is all regional and agency wide, depending on what you're doing.
If I can jump in.
I'm sorry, Demetrius, please go ahead.
No, it's okay. I was going to say to the person that said that, just think about the fact that I'm here with a hat on and I show up to all my interviews. I should have, Bernice knows, this is how I show up all the time.
To all events.
So, and some people question it when I first go. They're like, you're gonna dress like that? I'm like, yeah, that's who I am. Like that's So.
Yeah,
Andrew, yeah.
I just like to say that, I mean, of course, we hire a lot of people out of the military, and a lot of them are heavily tattooed. But when they come interview, they're wearing a coat and a tie, so you don't know that they're heavily tattooed. They can be as tattooed as they like. And if they have piercings, just take them out. Just don't wear them to the interview. I mean, you can still be yourself, but if you want to pass the interview, you got to represent what the agency is expecting you to be in terms of representing the agency. And if it's more important to you to show off your ink and everything else, then you probably don't belong at least working for a federal law enforcement agency.
Yeah.
And I think one thing to keep in mind, Nick, that wasn't overtly communicated is, unfortunately, people do have biases, and unfortunately, those biases do sometimes show their heads during interviews, and so you always have to weigh what you're willing to sacrifice and what may be what ideas someone may have about who you are as a performer based on your appearance. So, I work at DC headquarters. I've been a federal employee, like I said, since 1999. I don't dress up every day, but that's my choice. But my productivity and my ability to do my job well has demonstrated, and I say this to my staff all the time, as long as you come to work clean so that I don't smell you, I really don't care what you look like. I just want to make sure you can perform your job well. And again, if I'm going to a meeting, I may throw a jacket on, because that, as Andrew pointed out, that is what's expected. They expect for you to look a certain way. So just be mindful that there are biases that exist, and people will some people may pre-decide on you based on your physical appearance. And that's not legal. They should not do that, but that is a risk that you take. So, in all fairness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's, be yourself, but find that balance and being able to see what are you willing to give up and not, as well as doing your research to kind of align with that particular culture of that agency versus, law enforcement versus other types of support within the government. Wonderful. There was another question came in from a student that, again, I wanted to open up to our panel. This one is kind of looking a little bit more about kind of networking and job boards. And so this student had said, I've heard broad statistics about the private sector saying that most people get hired through networking, not just applying to a job posting. Is this true for public service, or are most people hired solely through submitting their resume to a job posting?
I kind of want to go first.
You're kind of natural in my rotation anyway, so Bernice, why don't you start us off?
Give Bernice go. Yeah.
I have to say, for our agency, that is absolutely a lie. We have to utilize USA Jobs as the application venue or vehicle for all of our positions. They get posted, in both. We have accepted service and full-time permanent, and one of them is like you have to have a lot of eligibility things, and then the accepted service is open to the public. So, but we have to post all of our jobs in USA Jobs. So the first step is making the eligibility process, clearing the eligibility, and then clearing the qualifications. So if your resume did not, have it didn't meet all the requirements, you're not even going to make it through a qualification process for you to get a call back for an interview. So I will say no, it's a no for us in FEMA, and only because we use USA Jobs for everything. I am pretty active on LinkedIn. We post all of our jobs that obviously derive from USA Jobs into Indeed, ZipRecruiter, Glassdoor, but all of them are is an awareness. I even use Handshake. I use all of the other platforms. At the end, an applicant has to go through USA Jobs and apply for the job. So all of these processes kind of separated. You have the hiring managers, you have the HR liaisons, and then you have a higher headquarters for us is Chico at FEMA, and they do the eligibility and the qualification review. So we don't even get a chance to do that. And I don't know how many applicants or how many did they actually clear through before I get a list of applicants that I can call in for an interview. So, and that is to maintain some checks and balances and to make sure that the opportunities are open to everybody, and to be able to, to have a wide variety of applicants, and, opportunity is there for everybody.
Yeah, equal access, absolutely. Good. Yeah, Ebony, please.
And I was going to say, while we post all of our positions on USA Jobs, we do have certain positions that do have direct hire authority. And so, and there are various authorities that you can just non-competitively have a job appointed for you. So for example, if you're disabled, there are certain hiring authorities that you can get without having to compete for your position. If you're a military spouse or a military veteran, there are certain positions that can be non-competitively competed. At my agency, we have shortages of 801s, which are general engineers, and 1301s, which are physical sciences. So again, those are positions that we have direct hiring authority for. And what that means is, if I meet you at the 7-Eleven and you hand me your resume and you're a general engineer, and I look at your resume and I think it's a qualified resume and I want to hire you, I can then come back and submit your name to a hiring and to an HC specialist, who will then do what Bernice described in terms of verifying that your resume does meet the duties of the general engineer. You do have the qualifications to support you in this position, and you can then be offered that position. So there are various mechanisms to coming into the federal government. There are various hiring authorities. The competitive service is the most broadly used, where you apply directly in USA Jobs, but there are other avenues to get in. However, we do protect both ourselves as hiring managers and then people who are hired, because you don't want to get a job offer and then that job offer be declined because something under the board happened. So we all have to make sure that we're not, just onboarding family members and things like that. There's certain protocols that we have to follow to make sure we're doing above board things. But networking is always a good thing, because who knows, you may apply for a job competitively, as Bernice described, and it went through all of the vets, all of the processing, and you happen to make the certification that's referred to a hiring manager, and they remember you from a symposium that you spoke at. So networking is always key. While we don't have the same flexibilities as private sector, there's always benefits to networking. So I encourage students to network as much as possible. Get your resume out there as much as possible, and just reach out to different organizations and their hiring boards, because they may get updates from federal government message boards that inform them about different positions that are open. And again, that's something that you found out by networking. So always network.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Very good. Demetrius or Andrew, anything that you'd like to add about this point?
I think the fact that Ebony just kind of nailed it with saying network. Anyone who knows me knows that I don't get paid for this. Maybe I should work out something with them, but I am a huge LinkedIn advocate. And so I definitely say, if you don't have a LinkedIn, create a LinkedIn, and that's the best way to network. It's not as invasive. And so to what Ebony stated, even when you're going to apply to USA Jobs, or you're going to apply on our website at Jeffco, even though you're going to apply and you have to apply, making those connections and building that rapport is still important. And it always has been, and it probably always will be.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Andrew, was there a point you wanted to make? Yeah,
so real quick, the networking, it is very important. One thing I do, I teach a federal law enforcement class. So I have guest speakers come in, but the guest speakers I have come in are recruiters. So they can talk about their organization, but they're also the direct line to getting in the process. And most of them also handle internships. So I work on getting students that want to go into federal law enforcement internships with agencies. So not only can they get actual exposure to that agency, but you got your foot in the door, and they know you and you know them, and it gives you a leg up when you apply, when you interview. So it's really, really important. That's, plus it saves me a classroom time where I don't have to speak the entire time. Because I have someone else come in and do it for me. But it's very helpful to them.
I think something that's really valuable is, when these types of relationships, these professional relationships and networking like that, you can learn a lot more about the organization, its structure, the culture, some of the things that we've heard our panelists speak about in regards to preparation and research. Very good points. Nice. I think another student brought in a really relevant question, kind of relates to something that I wanted to ask you all as well. And so for this one, let's take a look. Demetrius, why don't you start us off with this one? It was mentioned a little earlier that positions could receive thousands of applicants to one position. How does a student really stand out to be able to get that interview in the first place?
So two things. One, I'm a backtrack. Network. Two, truly answer the questions that are in. So someone, I think Bernice brought up earlier about the supplemental questions. Please answer the questions fully. That is like one of the biggest things that we see. So we say, hey, can you answer this question? And people say, see resume. And I'm like, see, I won't be going any further with your application. Like, because you're already sharing that you don't want to follow the rules. You don't want to do things the way that we're asking. And there's a reason behind it. I know some folks feel that if I already attached my resume, why do I need to fill out the application? And the reason for that is because the application is legal. Your resume is not, right? When you sign that application, anything you put in the application is now a legal document versus you can have everything you want in your resume. That's not a legal document. And so that's the reason why recruiters tend to still ask those questions, even though you attach your resume. So that's one of the things I would say, if you really want to stand out, is make sure you answer those questions. And then the last part I'll say is, again, look at what you're applying to and see, do you truly qualify? Because that's going to be the other piece. Because we are getting thousands of applications. So it's like, all right, who is the most qualified for the job? I think almost all of our missions probably as a recruiters to hire the best qualified candidate. So who's the best qualified candidate? Can you truly speak to the questions that are there?
Very good. Yeah. Take the time, intention and discipline. Yeah, absolutely. Any of our other panelists like to kind of add to that piece about how to stand out? Yeah, Andrew.
So if you have something special in your background, make sure you trumpet that, broadcast it. I had a student that I found out speaks 6 languages, including Russian and Arabic fluently. And she would submit her resume for me to review. And I said, you don't have your languages on her. And she's like, well, it's something that I do. I said, no. You're applying for the federal government. That will get you to the top of the line. If they see you're fluent in Russian and Arabic, there's agencies that'll fight to get you. So don't hide things like that. And the other thing I would recommend is when you turn your resume in, spell check the thing first. No, nothing puts people off more than having a resume that's poorly written or has misspelled words. So have somebody review it for you and then spell check it and make sure it's very professional and solid.
Yeah, Bernice, please.
And make sure your resume is not a one-pager. It does not work for the federal government. We will not make assumptions on your qualifications based on titles, based on salaries, based on any of those things. We actually want you to be fully explicit when you're telling us the accomplishments that you have come up with in each one of the positions that you did. If this was an accomplishment that was achieved through volunteerism or education or any other alternative, outside, I don't know.
That's it.
Yeah, anything. I mean, you don't have to necessarily have those qualifications based on a job. So yes, add any additional training, certifications, languages that is relevant to the job, and be explicit on your on the specialized experience statement that I talked about earlier. When you look in an application, you have everything that you could need to make sure you are the most qualified, and highlight all of the things that they were looking for to do the job that we're asking you to answer, so that we can find you on the pile. So really focus on the job announcement and ensure that you tailor the resume towards the job, and leave no assumptions made. Make sure that you are explicit. I will rather look at a resume that is 5 to 7 pages long than a one-pager. I'm not even gonna waste my time. I know that you didn't put enough effort for me to know that you are qualified. Again, position, titles, salaries, and I don't know, anything else that just is a title or a one pager, one sentence will not do for the federal government. We cannot make assumptions about you.
And that's really key. So I'm going to give you a really quick tip. Convert your resume to PDF. Do not upload a Word file. I do not look at resumes that are submitted via Word because the formatting gets all jumbled up. Please convert your resume to a PDF before submitting it. To touch on what Bernice pointed out with the specialized experience statement. The specialized experience statement is one of the key factors that the qualifying, the person who does the qualifying review is going to look at. They're going to look at, does your resume support the specialized experience statement? So I would take it a step further to actually identify within your resume the things that you do to support the specialized experience. For example, the specialized experience may say, experience stocking teddy bears on the shelf at Toys R Us. And you couldn't say Toys R Us because that's too prescriptive, but experience stocking teddy bears on the shelf. So my resume would state, in my position at the Department of Agriculture, I was the supervisor for shelf maintenance, ensuring that teddy bears were properly stocked on the shelf. So you want to ensure that your resume leaves no doubt that you meet the specialized experience statement. Another thing to keep in mind, because there are tons of applications that we could potentially review. When it comes to the interview process, we don't have to interview anyone. We can interview some, one, none, and make a decision based off just that paper. I personally would never hire someone that I haven't spoken with, but I may just decide to interview one person. So you want to make sure that your resume is very, very key, as Bernice said, in articulating exactly who you are. So if I only have time to interview one person, you're that one person. And it will not happen if it's in a Word document. It has to be a PDF.
Oh yeah, federal resumes are a very different ball game. Definitely utilize our session that we have at 3:30 to talk about this. Students use your career centers as well. We can all support you with that as well. But yeah, federal resumes are a very different ball game than the private sector.
And really quick, Nick, while you're talking about that, federal resumes are also very different from local government. So do not send me a 5-page resume.
Hey, Demetrius, I have one more comment on what Ebony said. Just like you will tailor the resume to what the specialized experience is, try to tie it up to achievements, quantifiable achievements. If you just give me your job description, you will be thrown in the garbage. I will not even waste my time. I don't need to know what you do. I need to know how you have contributed to the work that you do. So that is a very important part, because yes, you're tailoring your resume to what I'm looking for, but tell me, how have you actually accomplished doing this job? It's critical for any job, really.
Yep.
Good point, very good point. So for this next question, Andrew, I wanted to kind of start with you and kind of go back through that same fashion once more. And so for this one, is there any question that you notice students really struggling with in an interview, or a fresh applicant really struggling with in an interview? And what advice would you have for them to overcome that particular challenge?
I think one of the biggest, most challenging questions is, what is your greatest strength? Because people don't like to give the impression that they're bragging about themselves. And what is your greatest weakness? Because people don't like to admit any deficiencies. So most interviewers, they really downplay the strength. They're very humble in interviewees, and you shouldn't do that. If you do something well, make sure, because when you're hiring, you're trying to differentiate between applicants. So if everyone says, yeah, I'm punctual, it's not something that really jumps out and grabs you. But if you're yeah, I'm free fall parachute qualified or something like that. And when you go to your weakness, everyone tries to turn the weakness into a strength. So they say, well, I just don't like to delegate because I want everything to be perfect and I want to make sure it's done on time. That's not a weakness. The weakness needs to be, yeah, I don't manage my time as well as I could. I need to focus on that, and I've been working on that. So when you're asked, what's your greatest strength, what's your greatest weakness, actually tell them what it is. And don't try to think, I got to maneuver this so my strength is actually a strength and my weakness is actually a strength, because I mean, panels have heard it all, and they prefer honesty and truth than, hey, this is what I learned in a seminar. I'll turn my weakness into actually an attribute that someone wants. So that'd be my advice.
Yeah, honesty, self-awareness, and the ability to do something to change and be better is far more valuable. I would agree to that. Demetrius, how about for you in this question?
Yeah, I would definitely say what Andrew was saying. I'll segue off of that saying it's okay to be vulnerable, especially if you're going for a leadership position. We want to see that as a leader, you can be vulnerable and you can have that humility. A question that folks struggle with, kind of in that same vein that Andrew stated, is when they say, "Why you?" Right? So you get that question, "Why should we hire you?" Answer that truthfully. Why should they hire you? What does that look like? And again, it's an opportunity for you to sell yourself. And so I always think about branding. So I come from a sales and marketing background. And so what's your brand, right? And leave that piece there when they ask that question. Like, I can't wait for that. I get that question because that's the question that I want to make sure that I nail. If I didn't nail any other question, is why me? And so prepare for that. And again, you don't have to be braggadocious, but you do want to make sure that you are able to speak to what that position is and why at the end of the day, there should probably almost be no question of why they're going to hire you.
Ebony, how about for you in your experience?
So what I've found is sometimes when people don't have the answer or they don't have what they feel is the right answer to a question, they don't acknowledge that. So I think when you ask the question, for example, tell me about a time you had to deal with a difficult coworker, and then. And everyone's had this experience at some point in some fashion, I get along with everyone. Instead of, taking that approach, what the interviewer is trying to see is how you handle conflict. And you can say, while I haven't had any direct conflict with any of my coworkers, I've managed conflict this way. So you want to try to get to the root of, you want to answer what the root of the question is, even if you don't have a direct example of you in a conflict situation with a coworker. You want to demonstrate how you handled conflict. So you can acknowledge, well, I haven't had any conflict with my coworkers, but, in this other situation, when I had to deal with conflict, this is how I managed it. You want to make sure that you're, able to identify those skills that the interviewer or the panel of interviewers, are seeking. Another example would be, like we kind of touched on this earlier when we said, well, do you have any questions? Always make sure you leave that interview very clear on, when should you expect a follow-up? Is it okay if I send you a follow-up email? Because again, you're trying to stand out. You want to make sure, not that everyone isn't going to send a follow-up, but remember to follow up. And I like to, I'm a humorous person, so I like to be a little quirky and, maybe throw a joke in here and there, just again, something that's going to differentiate me. So that was more than the answer question you asked, but it was just, to delineate yourself and make sure that you can stand out, during that interview process.
Standing out for positive reasons, for things that relates to that culture or that ability. Yeah, Andrew, I think you had a moment.
Yeah, just real quick, to follow up on something Ebony said. So sometimes, like I interviewed someone who was applying for an executive leadership job and asked them, hey, when was a time you were involved in a conflict and had to manage conflict? And their response was, well, when I was a kid, my brother and I used to fight over toys. I mean, the example should be relevant too, right? I mean, that's an example of conflict, but it's like, that's not a good example of conflict. So you should, again, tie it to the position you're applying for, not just, I don't know, I don't have a good answer, so I'll just say this, because you actually sound worse than if you say, yeah, I don't really have an example that I can offer. So
let's be frank, all students, this, you've been in group projects, you've navigated conflict with group members in those projects. We've all done them. There's really good, relevant examples there. I wanted to give you an opportunity as well to say, what are some of your thoughts about these difficult or challenging questions and how to overcome them?
Me this time? Okay. I think that you got cut off right there when you said my name. Actually, this is a summary, and I had prepared this answer for sure because it is it is something that we constantly see. So the questions that the most applicants struggle with or interviewees is situation-based questions. And the reason why is because of time management and the ability to move on. At the end, if you didn't answer the question that I asked you, you fail a part of your interview. So if you did not rehearse in a way, like examples that will be relevant to the job that you're applying, if you didn't truly answer those questions that come as part of the questionnaire in USA Jobs, you have no idea what I may be asking you. So that means you didn't do a research, you have not actually think of how you're going to use the SMART acronym, situation, all this stuff, and you have no ability to manage the time. Most of our interviews are very time limited because we normally use panels. And that means if they schedule you for an hour interview, that means you have at the most 30 to 40 minutes in front of somebody to really answer questions. Everything else is going to be logistics. It's going to be an opportunity for you to answer your own, to ask your own questions. So again, situation-based examples, make sure you practice them or you talk to someone about it, because if you go in a rabbit hole and you never actually answer my question, you lost me. And it's already, you'll be immediately like, oh, I don't know. We asked this guy, what about a time? And they just couldn't even answer anything. So you lose your audience when you cannot address the situation-based question. So I will say that's the most drastically difficult question for applicants. So whatever you anticipate that may be asked, have your own examples in different levels and different situations. Maybe if you're a brand new, employee entering the workforce, you may have never worked, right? So just like Nick and Andrew said, if you actually dealt with a working group or with a teacher or someone that gave you a hard time, make it relatable and illustrate how you actually dealt with the situation, because this is all about behavioral responses. So it's not so much about what actually happened, but it's how do you respond to these type of questions.
Yeah, behavior-based questions can be very, very challenging. And I think it really represents that reflection and research, not only about the organization, but about ourselves, so that we have these really rich stories and rich examples that exemplify these points. And we can deliver them concisely and consistently so that we aren't lost in the weeds and potentially fail that interview. It's a very good point. Good. Well, we're getting close on time. We only have about 7 more minutes left. And so I wanted to kind of just bring it back together and say, okay, panelists, if you were to give our students, 60 seconds, 2 minutes tops of what is that last little nugget, that most important thing to consider, that last value statement you would say, what would you share with our students? And whomever would like to go ahead and jump in, please feel free.
This is a good one to be first on. No. Go ahead, Bernice. Go ahead.
Okay, I will say be prepared for something fun. The leadership that I work for in Region A at FEMA are actually looking for team members, right? So they may ask you a question about what is it that you do for fun? What are you interested on? So even if you don't get asked or you don't get an opportunity to talk about that, have that as well prepared, because it may shock you that somebody, I just recently sat as a spectator in a job interview for like 20 different people. And one of the questions that they asked was, what can you do with a pen? Tell me 10 things that you will do with a pen other than writing. And the people just did not know what to do or what to say. So be prepared for the unexpected and just be you. Be original, be authentic, and be you. Because a lot of times they're looking for the personality, for the energy. Have energy to be excited about potentially getting a job. If you are monotone, and even if it's your personality, understand your energy will translate through, these phone calls or virtual meetings. So be positive, be authentic, be you, and just be you. If you try to pretend and you get the job under other bases, you're going to fail. So just be you.
Any of our other panelists?
I'll
Yeah.
jump in. I'll jump. Andrew was giving us the rock eyebrow, so I was like, I would say, remember, and I said this earlier, but I'll echo it again. Interviews go two ways, right? So on the interview, even though you're going there as the interviewee, think about it. Typically from a recruiter's role, I always look at the 80-20. As a recruiter, I should only be talking 20% of the time. You should be talking 80% of the time. So own the interview. And I don't mean over talk, right? Don't overshare, but at the same time, you the one, you set the tone, bring the energy, set the tone, share what you need to share, and make sure that you do highlight those things that truly make you stand out. Because at the end of the day, we are looking for that best qualified candidate. But to Bernice's point, we're looking for that team member. And so think about what are you bringing to the team? And highlight whatever that is going to be. Like, hey, here's my contribution, and I'm going to highlight, this is what I'm going to bring to the table. You know, every day that I show up, I'm going to show up as X.
So, good. Ready? I can't hear you. So, yes, but again, on what Demetrius said, don't overtalk. Some people deliver a good answer, and then they talk their way back out of what into an answer that's not that good. So, be confident, but not overconfident. Be decisive, not tentative. But when you've given your answer, when everybody's got their head down writing because they're taking notes about what you said, don't feel compelled to keep talking and potentially ruin the good answer you just gave. So brevity is good as long as you get to the point.
And I would just say, be human. I apologize. I had to turn my camera off. I have a 4-month-old that I'm nursing. So this is probably TMI, but again, it's a part of my reality. And I think sometimes the thing that separates us is, you know, we portray ourselves as if we're robots, as if we're not human. I recently took a new job. I'm about 6 weeks into my new position. And while interviewing in a virtual space for this interview, I made it very clear to the person. And again, maybe some others would recommend not doing this, but I like people to know what they're getting when they get Ebony Brooks, because again, I'm a human. So I made it very clear to them when they were interviewing me, look, I'm pregnant. I'm planning to take 4 months off from maternity leave. I really want this job. You'll get 100% of me while I'm there, but I want you to know who I am. So just and again, I'm not saying divulge your personal business, but I think providing a human connection for people just reminds them, this is a person that I'm speaking with. You know, I have the potential to help a person or take an opportunity away from a person. Again, you don't have to divulge that. No one's allowed to ask you, are you pregnant, if they could actually see you doing an interview. You know, those are things that are, you know, prohibited by law. But I'm an oversharer. I'm a Sagittarius. I don't know if any of you are into zodiacs, but you know, I share information. And again, some of those things have helped me. I don't think I've ever interviewed for a position that I didn't ultimately get. Not that my technique works for everyone, because there may have been, like, I may have interviewed with Andrew and he probably would not have hired me just because I'm not wearing a suit and tie to work every day. But I think it's very important to be human. Remind the person that you're interviewing that you're a human first. You know, and when you leave with that, and just again, something that can distinguish you from everyone else that you spoke with, I think that'll leave a lasting impression. So remember that you're human, the person you're interviewing with is human, and go with it.
Yeah, please, Bernice.
And I want to say one last thing to just kind of piggyback off of what Ebony said. The interview, if you were not selected and it was based on, oh, maybe this person is not going to fit our personalities or team, you know, be thankful that you may not have gotten this job. Because if you were during this interview and you were hoping to be selected based on who you are and you were not selected, you will have a miserable time being a part of a team that will not accept you the way you are. So I think it's a great opportunity to think of those rejections as a redirection into a better position and a better team So just take that as practice. And, I tell that to a lot of our applicants. They go through the process several times and they reach out to us and we tell them, use this as practice and get better at it. And you will realize that you will be selected for the right fit at the right team. Not every rejection is lost. It's every direction to a better place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really appreciate that point. Demetrius, yeah, I think you're about to say.
Yeah, Nick, actually, it's on a different thing. I did want to answer the question from Bridget about what management. She had a question of, can you ask an interviewer what management styles do you employ here?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yes, that is a great question. I just want to make sure I did touch on that because I saw that question in the Q&A.
If they give you that opportunity, put them on the spot.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Ask them what your communication style is. What is your leadership style? What are your top 3 leader attributes? What defines you as leader? I will ask them a bunch of questions and they will be like, I don't think we want to hire Bernice. So.
Yeah, I mean, you're interviewing them as much as they are interviewing you, because
exactly.
I appreciate that sentiment that if you are who you genuinely are and present your best self and it doesn't work out, then that wasn't the right position for you or that team. And so I always tell students, reduce that anxiety by just being yourself. Wonderful points, wonderful points. All right, well, panelists, I cannot thank you enough for your time today to be able to share this wisdom, be able to connect with our students. It's something that we find immensely, immensely valuable for us here at CU Denver and MSU Denver. And again, cannot thank you enough for your time. Thank you for sharing this wisdom and this information with our students. For our students, just want to remind that we do have our federal resume writing workshop that starts at 3:30. So if you are available, please definitely jump into that, because like we've heard a little bit, it is a bit of a different game, a bit of a different resume. And again, thank you so much, panelists, for your wisdom and your time today.